All right, we need to go over the key terminology with auto insurance here. So we're looking at a declarations page, which would be kind of like your information page for your auto insurance. Typically, this comes in a big old packet, and you have a lot more information than just this, but this is a very simplified version, and it'll give us what we need to get started with auto insurance for sure. So if you look at this declarations page, it's got the company name, it's got the policy number, when this is enforced, and typically it is a 6-month period. That's pretty standard. It tells you who the drivers are, the primary driver and the additional drivers, gives you some information about them, and then it tells you what kind of cars they have. So they're driving a 2022 Toyota Prius, they're driving a 2016 Subaru Outback, and gives you all the information about each car. Car 1, car 2, tells you how much it costs for each one. All right, so what we need to do is go through each of these numbered sections and write down what each of these things mean. So we talk about limit, and we're going to find this number 1 on this declarations page. This whole column is the limits. This is the maximum amount that they're going to pay you for a certain event. So a limit is the maximum amount the insurance will pay for a certain event. So this is not over the course of a year, this is per event. So if you cause bodily injury to somebody, they will pay up to that amount, and it's $100,000 per person, $300,000 per accident. If there's more medical bills than that, then you're going to have to come up with it somehow, because that is the limit that they will pay. All right, second thing here, deductible. So kind of like what we saw with health insurance, deductible works a little bit different this time, because for auto insurance, the deductible is also per event, and it doesn't accumulate over the course of the year. So it's the amount you must pay before the insurance begins before the insurance benefit begins, and it resets every event. So let's say that you have a deductible. Well, let's look at these deductibles. So let's say you have $1,000 deductible for this comprehensive coverage, which we'll get to in a minute. And something happens in that category and the repair is going to cost $800. You're going to have to pay that whole $800, because what this number says is you pay up until this amount and then we pay the rest. So if your repair is $1,500, you pay the first $1,000, then the insurance company pays the last $500. If you are below it, you pay the whole thing, and then you get another one that comes in that category, say a month later, resets. You still pay the first $1,000. It's not like health insurance where once you pay it, you're good for the year. This is per event. So the higher the deductible, the more you have to pay every time something happens. All right, item 3 here is this line of bodily injury liability per person per occurrence. So this pays for medical expenses. And lost income of anyone injured in an accident you cause. Okay, now the key word in that is liability. Liability means that you are at fault, and when you're at fault, this part of your insurance comes in. So if you hurt somebody and then you have medical bills, your insurance is the one that pays for it, and it's this component of it that does that. It is illegal to drive without this. You have to have liability insurance, because if you cause an accident to somebody, they need to be able to collect the money to get their medical expenses taken care of. Item number 4 is called property damage liability, and there's that word again, liability. So this is if you are at fault and you cause property damage up to $75,000, the insurance company will pay for that. So this pays for property damage. Caused by your car. So say you veer off the road and take out somebody's mailbox, or you run into somebody else's car. This is going to pay for that. So when you damage somebody else's property, and not a medical bill here, but somebody else's property, and you're at fault, this will kick in. So again, the limit though, if you do more than $75,000 worth of damage, you're out of luck. Like that's just going to be what you have to pay. Notice that this section doesn't have anything here. That's because liability insurance never has a deductible. Okay, so if you cause damage to a person or their property, there is no deductible. The insurance pays it up to the limit. This 100, 300 here, it says per person per occurrence. So if you were to get in an accident and cause physical damage to people, like you injure them, and let's say that there are 2 people in the other car. Well, this is going to pay $100,000 per person up to $300,000 per accident. Well, if there's only 2 people, then it's up to $200,000 because it's $100,000 per person. If there were 3 people, $100,000, $100,000, $100,000, now we're at $300,000. If there's 4 people and it adds up to over $300,000, then well, that's the limit, right? So that's the most that it will pay per accident, but up to $100,000 per person. All right. Item 5, medical payments. Pays for medical expenses. Of you and any passengers in your car. After an accident. Okay, and it says that's $5,000 per person. So it's not a lot, but this is to cover your medical expenses. If you get into that accident and something happens to people in your car, this is where that's going to cover it. So I want to stress that it's of you and any passengers in your car, as opposed to the liability is what happens for people that are in the other car. All right, item 6, uninsured/underinsured motorist coverage. All right, so what this does is it's going to pay for the medical expenses and damage when the person who caused the accident doesn't have insurance. All right, so if you get into an accident, somebody else hits you, it's their fault, but for whatever reason, they're driving without insurance, which again is illegal, but it doesn't, just because it's illegal doesn't mean it doesn't happen, right? So this is going to cover you if somebody else causes an accident, it's their fault, but they don't have insurance. All right, so let's say it pays for medical expenses. And damage. When the person who caused the accident is uninsured or is underinsured, right? So that underinsured means they have insurance, but it's not enough. So they did more than whatever this number is, more damage than whatever this number is here. So the bodily injury, the property damage liability, they have limits. If their limit isn't high enough to cover the damage to you, then it goes over to your insurance, and this covers you. So up to these amounts if they're either uninsured or underinsured. All right, item 7 is comprehensive. This pays for damage to your vehicle. That is not caused by an accident. So things like theft, things like vandalism, things like weather. We can do an example of all of those, right? Your car gets stolen. That's the first thing. That's the worst case scenario. If your car gets vandalized, somebody keys it or bashes your mirror or some slashes your tire, something like that. Your comprehensive insurance can cover that. Weather, you get caught in a hailstorm and your car gets dented up, or something kicks up a rock from in front of you and breaks your windshield, things like that can be paid for with comprehensive insurance. It says actual cash value. So they're going to pay for that up to the value of whatever that is. So if it's a windshield replacement and you've got a car with lane assist and things like that, and it's got to be calibrated and it's very expensive to repair, they're going to repair it. Just whatever the value is. However, you have to pay the first $1,000. In this case, anyway, whatever your deductible is, you have to pay the first X amount, whatever you set it to. Okay, so that's comprehensive. Collision is similar, except collision is going to kick in for damage to your vehicle caused by an accident. All right, or another object, like with a car or another object. So pays for damage. To the vehicle, to your vehicle, after a collision with another car, or object, and your fault. Okay, so this would be, for example, you get in an accident with another driver, okay, and your car gets busted up, but it's your fault. So you rear-ended them or something, and it's determined that it's your fault. Your insurance will cover the damage to the other car with the property damage liability. Your insurance will cover the damage to your car with the collision coverage. It'll pay whatever it costs to repair up to the value of the car. They may decide that they're just going to total the car, which means they're going to write you a check for whatever the car is worth if this damage is too high. But they'll pay for that repair. You pay the first $1,000, and then they pay the rest up to whatever they decide is the value of the car. So it says with another car or object. So this, let's say you run into a tree and the car gets damaged by the tree. Well, if it's your fault, then collision coverage is what would hit here. If you were to hit a deer in the road and the deer just jumped out at you, that's not your fault. So now we're going to be into comprehensive coverage, because it's not one of these three things, but it's something that was out of your control. It's not caused by an accident that was your fault. Okay, emergency road service, number 9. That's kind of like AAA, but it could come in your auto insurance as well. So it pays for assistance. When you have a flat tire, dead battery, can't get into your car because you locked yourself out. Flat tire, dead battery, locked out. Oh. Etc. Okay, so it's roadside assistance, emergency road service. Maybe you ran out of gas. They could bring you a little small tank of gas to get to the next gas station. So whatever that is. So that's your emergency road service. And number 10, rental car reimbursement. So if you get in an accident, it's going to take 2 weeks to repair your car. which isn't impossible. Could take longer. You could potentially, if you have rental car reimbursement, you could get a rental car and have it covered by your insurance. There are limits to this, $50 per day, so you can't go rent a car that's going to be a $300 vehicle. $50 per day, $1,000 max. In this scenario, if you divide $1,000 by 50, that's 20 days worth of rentals. After that, they're going to say you're on your own. If the car that you rent is more than $50, they'll pay the first 50 until you reach the 1,000 max. So that is a good thing to have because rentals can be expensive. So pays for a rental car. While your car is being repaired. All right, so what abbreviation would be used to describe the coverage of this policy? So what the abbreviation goes like this. It goes bodily injury first. And that's the double slash, right? That's the first two. And then the third slash is the property damage. So what it's describing is the liability component of your insurance policy. So this is going to be 100, 300, 75. That's the way you would describe this policy. The 100 is the bodily injury you cause to other people per person. The 300 is the bodily injury you cause to other people per accident, and this is in thousands, 100,000, 300,000. And 75 is how much will be covered in property damage, 75,000. So it's all liability. That we're describing here. All right, other things to look at in this section, which we don't have to write, but I do want you to understand. So car 1 and car 2 were labeled here. So in this column, this is what we pay for each of these different components of auto insurance for car 1. This is what we pay for each component of auto insurance for car 2. Every driver is different. Every driver has a different risk profile. And so the insurance company will ask all sorts of questions. They want to know how old you are. They want to know where you live. They want to know how far you're going to drive the car on a daily basis. They want to know how many accidents you've had recently. All sorts of things go into this. And they settle on a risk profile for each driver. They assign a driver to each car, and then they tell you how much each part of this will cost. So they have thrown in roadside service for free. It's included in the policy, which is nice. But then all of these different amounts add up to your premiums, and the premium is defined just like in health insurance as the cost to buy the policy. Once you pay the premium, now you're insured, and then all of these different things come up per event. There are some discounts. So we have a safe driver discount, a multi-policy discount. So if you have a good record of safe driving, you don't have very many accidents, you can definitely get it discounted. Multi-policy would mean if you get your auto insurance and your renter's insurance from the same company, or maybe homeowner's insurance if you have a house. If you get more than one policy with the same company, they will typically give you a discount, like for bundling it and making it more business for them. So then you have your total policy premium. But remember, up at the top of this declarations page, this was only from April 1st to October 1st. So this is a 6-month policy, right? And that amount was given $645. So that's for 6 months, which would mean roughly $1,290 for the whole year. Not bad. I mean, this must be 2 adults with responsible records, right? $1,290 for the whole year. You usually pay this in a lump sum. You can budget it and save it so that you save the monthly amount if you want to. You can sort of have that routed to a bank account, whatever you want to do. But you're going to have to send a check for $645 every 6 months, and then this becomes active, and you can show this declaration. You wouldn't show the declaration page. You would show proof of insurance whenever you needed it in an accident. All right, so this gives you a pretty good overview of all the different kinds of auto insurance that you will encounter, and I'm sure a lot of you have already started paying for your own auto insurance, but maybe you didn't know what all the components were. Item 3 here, item 4 here, those are the ones that you absolutely must have by law. You have to be insured for the liability parts. The other things are all optional, and it's a good idea to have them. You should have all of them, but you're not going to be, it's not illegal to be without them. You're not going to be arrested for not having them. Depending on how valuable your car is, you might drive without collision, right? You might be driving an old car that you paid $1,000 for. Well, then maybe you can forego collision, because what's the point? If you have to pay the first $1,000 in a deductible, then what's the point of having collision coverage if the car wasn't even worth much more than that, right? So you don't want to pay that premium if it's not worth it to do that. Same thing with comprehensive. So you have to make those decisions based off of the value of your car and also how likely you are to get in an accident, but that's something that's kind of out of your control in a lot of cases. Okay, so that's everything about auto insurance that you need to know right now.